Hey everyone, welcome again to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast, where we talk about the movies off of the 200 best horror movies of all time list, which is a Rotten Tomato. We've been doing this. This is like the 10th episode, 9th episode, and I still can't figure out how to say that. I need to just write it out somewhere. That makes sense.
Yeah,
anyway,
we need some sort of opening script.
Yeah. My name is Clay, and with me, as always, is Amanda. Amanda, how are you doing?
Oh, I mean, I'm fine. If you take into account, the global pandemic and everything that's happening in the world, I'm fine.
No, don't say,
knows?
because then that dates when this podcast came out. Unless you want to make it a object of record, in which case, yes, we're all in the middle of isolation at the moment.
Well, I feel like it's a little, we have some quite a backlog at this point of episodes we haven't quite released yet, so...
Well, it's going to be
like
funny. It's going to be funny when this comes out because I'm sure everything will be back to normal and we'll just be like day 37 of isolation. Can't you all relate to it? Anyway, the movie that we are talking about today is a movie from 1999 or 2000 or 2001, depending on where you're looking at. A movie called Ginger Snaps, Canadian werewolf movie. It's number 131 on the Rotten Tomato 200 Best Horror Movies list with 89%, an adjusted rating of 90.189%. Have you seen this one before?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quite some time ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is this movie about you? Because I saw both of these characters and I was like, I feel like Amanda identifies with both of these girls.
Yep. Yeah.
I found myself in it as well. I found myself in the fat kid in the hockey equipment playing with the dog. So it's a movie for that everyone can.
Everyone can find something to relate to in this film.
I had seen this a long time ago. I haven't watched it since. I think I only watched it maybe I usually say 10 years ago, but now I'm past that mark with most things.
Yeah.
So I would say, I don't know, 15, 20 years. Oh, God. 15. Let's say 15 so I don't.
So you feel better about it.
Yeah, so I don't feel that old. Yourself?
Yeah, I think for me it was probably 15 or 16 years ago, in all seriousness. And I was in high school. And yeah, there are some things in this movie that I was doing myself before I watched the girls in this movie. And then when I watched this movie, I was just like, this is fucking bullshit. I don't like this.
Yes. You had the it's too real response.
It was too real. It was like, I had painted my bedroom walls like dark purple and had like weird black and white photographs all over them and like wore bones as jewelry, which I still do. And when I watched this, I was just like, fucking Hollywood, god damn it.
Yeah, you went through the most sacred of childhood into adulthood rites when you find out that you are not special.
Yes.
And there are other people who do the things that you like.
And that it's obvious enough that there is a movie being made.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This was one for me where I had seen this advertised on a few different VHSs or DVDs or something, and it was I think it might have been on a trailer on a video for like a really crappy movie, so I just assumed this was also a crappy movie.
Yeah, this movie falls victim to the same sort of marketing that I feel like a lot of horror movies in this period did, which is bad marketing.
Yeah. When I was cutting together the American Psycho episode, I watched the trailer for American Psycho, and I was like, this is a really weird trailer for this movie, and it feels like one of those movies that they didn't quite know how to sell.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine it being that one specifically being a difficult one to put together like promotional material for.
Yeah. This one, on the other hand, seems like it should be a slam dunk. I mean, it's werewolf coming of age story about two, adolescent girls. Seems like it should sell itself, but anyway, so why don't you listen to that trailer, and then in a couple minutes we'll be back and we'll talk about the movie.
for two sisters.
Together forever. United against life as we know it.
With an appetite for the macabre.
I'm slitting my throat. You should definitely hang.
All it takes is one night. And one bite.
Let's get out of here. What was it?
A big dog, maybe?
Did I change last night? Howl at the moon.
Ginger's changing.
How do you feel?
Wicked.
They're just being normal teenage girls.
I think she's gone.
Ginger snaps and bites.
We're almost not even related anymore.
Okay, Ginger Snaps, directed by John Fawcett, written by Karen Walton, starring Emily Perkins, Katharine Isabelle, Mimi Rogers, and a cute but slightly creepy old man janitor. Amanda, what happens in this movie?
The story of two outcast sisters, Ginger and Brigitte, in the mindless suburban town of Bailey Downs. On the night of Ginger's first period, she is savagely attacked by a wild creature. Ginger's wounds miraculously heal, but something is not quite right. Now Brigitte must save her sister and save herself. Things you'll find in this movie include, what do I have? Egregious late 90s styling.
Mm-hmm.
Premenstrual lycanthropy.
Mm-hmm.
Questionable parenting.
As always.
And cherry hunters.
Yeah. Which is really
the worst
really
phrase
gross.
In the English language.
And not just a snappy ska band from the 90s. So the most shocking thing that I took from this movie is that apparently you can bring a dog to school in Canada, like regularly, like a big dog.
Hey, I've seen that episode of The Simpsons.
I think it was every once a month they get a bring your dog to school to serve plot motivation day.
Yeah, bring your Rottweiler to the parking lot.
It's not even like a Chihuahua. It's like I don't know where she put that dog during the day. Did she keep it in a car, or was it like, did she bring it into class? Clearly,
I have so many questions about how school works in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, clearly I focused on the important things.
Yeah. Well, I was just caught up on what are those dudes doing sitting in the bleachers watching the girls have gym class? Mm-hmm. Why do they get to just sit there?
I feel like that's a movie staple though. There's for some reason that always happens. It's always like girls sitting in the bleachers like gossiping, or the guys from Greece talking about what happened over summer vacation or something.
But usually it's when they're doing like their after school activity.
Mm.
This was very like Brigitte literally runs up to Sam at one point and is like, "Are you high right now? I'm in class. You can't be here." So it's very explicitly like during the school day. It's like fifth period or something.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where people who write movies about high school, it's been so long since they've been in high school, they kind of forget how it works. Although it was a very different time. Maybe that was totally fine back then. I don't know.
Also Canada.
20 years ago. Also Canada, yes. But yeah, this is a werewolf movie where they've taken the horrors of growing up, specifically as a girl, I guess. Which,
yes.
Very horrible.
Absolutely.
And used it as a metaphor, and I don't know what the other word would be, but a metaphor, or I should say used the werewolfism as a metaphor for growing up and adolescence and stuff.
Yeah.
And what the first time I saw it, my initial thought was, I've seen movies where they use the werewolf stuff as a analog for growing up, like they've done it in Teen Wolf.
Yeah, it's a very, very good puberty metaphor.
Yeah, it actually watching this movie and Teen Wolf back to back would actually, I think, be a really good look at the difference how people view guys growing up and how people view girls growing up.
Yeah,
because in Teen Wolf, becoming a werewolf is like the best thing that happens to him in the movie. Like, his whole social life only improves when he becomes a werewolf. And in this one, it's very much not that, and it's very much terrifying. And it's not just, oh hey, you can slam dunk a basketball from the center court line now.
Yeah.
And they've done it. There was a movie in the 50s called I Was a Teenage Werewolf, which was not quite as on the nose, I don't think, as Teen Wolf in this one. But I think this is the first time where they've linked the werewolf mythology of once a month when there's a full moon, your body goes through a really horrifying change.
Yeah, you're in a lot of pain and you lash out.
Yeah, I think that's the first time they've put those two things together, the werewolf and the period cycle. And I'm surprised. It feels like it makes too much sense almost.
I wonder if, like, historically in the way that, like, women were accused of being witches when they were like speaking out of turn, or they knew something about medicine, like, witch, kill her. I wonder what the correlation is with women and like being accused of being a werewolf of some sort, if there's some sort of, like, historical or literary background that we're just ignorant about.
Oh, I'm sure menstruation is like the core concept that most monsters are based off of, because the people making those monsters are men and they don't understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, however, and put my trivia hat on, the idea of the werewolf as something that happens in a full moon once a month is only, it was created for the movie The Wolfman. The guy who wrote wrote Wolfman created that entire set backstory and mythology. The once a month, the full moon. Actually, the full moon thing actually came later. The full moon actually wasn't part of the original thing. And the can only be killed by silver. That's all a original creation for Universal Studios as the Wolfman. And it was so convincing and has been used for everything else since then. That's just understood as how werewolves work, and it's just the assumption that's how werewolves in history and mythology work. But I don't think that's actually the case.
Huh. That's really interesting. That's sort of like, yeah, I guess I can see why that would carry over to other, like, films and works of art and stuff, because it's such a complete mythology. Like, like it sets up enough rules and enough structure that it feels very legitimate. It's not just like, oh, we're gonna try and shoehorn in the full moon thing. It's like, no, there's full moon and there's silver and there's this rule and this rule. Like, it's enough stuff that it feels very like, well, somebody established this over time.
Yeah, it's very convincing. It's very they definitely looked at what they had done with vampires for Dracula, or I would say Dracula. And how there was like a set of rules of ways you could kill Dracula, and took that and took a similar idea and put it onto the werewolf, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. But none of those things apply in this movie, because this is a very different werewolf movie. That it generally, werewolf movies involve a transformation back and forth, but this one seems to be a one-way street.
Yeah, I actually had some questions about that, where I don't know if they needed to really get into it in the movie, but, like, during the movie, I was left wondering, is this a one-way street? Like, do you become this sort of creature and then you're just this creature forever and you never change back? Or do you do the monthly back and forth thing? And when you transform, or do you keep aspects of your human mind and personality, or are you just a mindless beast?
Yeah, it seems to be more of a one-way street, because the interesting thing that they seem to do here is, even though it makes sense to do the once a month correlation between, you know, having your period and being a werewolf, it's not so much that as much as it's just a analog for like puberty in general.
Yeah,
you know, because it's not. What I found anyway is that this movie feels less like a movie about, isn't it crazy how it's almost like when you get your period you turn into a werewolf, and it's more about two sisters who are very close growing apart because one of them starts growing up faster than the other one, and they ultimately have to go their separate ways, unfortunately through very violent means.
Yeah, and I think even if you are looking to sort of extend the puberty metaphor, it still works even with the lycanthropy, I can't say it.
Sure.
Even the werewolfism. It works as a metaphor because when you go through puberty, you don't change back.
Right.
Like once you get your period, you're barring a medical event, or when you get much older, that's it. You have it now.
Well, it's like what does the nurse at school say? She's like, yeah, so it's
that nurse.
Like that once a month for 30 years. So enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to jump straight into this right away, but I am going to mention the adults in this film. So many of them felt like intensely creepy, and like intensely creepy in their interest in like, ooh, like what are the girls doing? Like, what are the sisters doing? Like, oh, she has her period. Ooh, like, there's just a lot of like kind of ogling, and I don't mean that in like a sexual way. I just mean there's a weird, almost inappropriate focus on like, you know, now you're a young woman.
Right.
And the mom like strokes her hair, and it's like, what the fuck?
Well, that's why I think that the analog is a lot more appropriate to just puberty in general, because it seems to be more focused on that stuff in a way that I think is very creepy, but it's not inaccurate, you know? It's like that time in a person's life is very much you become self-conscious about it because a lot of other people point it out, and it makes you feel weird and stuff. It's like, you know, you start growing hair in weird places or something, and someone's like, you know, hairy back or something. You know, when you're turning into a werewolf. But you know what I mean? Where it's like it's very much it's very much something that is, everybody seems to be waiting for it to happen. And so it becomes a point of sticking on once it does, or if it doesn't, for that matter.
Yeah, you're right. And there is sometimes this weird, I guess weird's not the right word because it's probably very common, where it's sort of like, I don't know if it's maybe subconsciously, like when you're an adult, you're just so relieved it's not you anymore.
Yeah.
You're a little bit just like, oh man, you're dealing with that now, huh? Like, I don't know. But I read that in the behavior of a lot of the adults towards Ginger and Brigitte.
Yeah. And I think also for Ginger and Brigitte specifically, there is the added thing of being girls of a certain age surrounded by all of those, not just men, but primarily men. There is you feel in this movie how they have eyes on them all the time. and how there's always someone kind of saying something either snide or, lewd or something, or it's very much a constant that I assume is how it's like in real life, but which is really unfortunate.
Yep. Especially when you're a teenage girl. Right. When you're a woman in general in society, it's sort of a lingering thing that happens to you until you hit a certain age when you're no longer like sexually desirable. And then you become invisible, which I for one am looking forward to. But no, because when you're a teenage girl, not only are your male peers staring at you, but other girls are staring at you because you're all comparing yourself to each other. And like, if you feel like you're behind the curve, like I think they say at some point in the movie that both Ginger and Brigitte, despite being 16 and 15 respectively, neither one of them have had their periods yet.
Right.
So that's very late. That's like years late. And so I can imagine, you feel extra self-conscious because you're behind.
Right.
I don't know if it's worse to be the first girl in your year that gets her period or the last. Right. But like those are the hard positions. If you are in one of those spots, you're really screwed.
Yes. Yeah. And I also thought it was interesting. I kind of this movie had 2 sequels. And as far as I know, they don't really get into this, but I thought and it's not really what it's about, so I understand. But I found it very interesting how they handled the boy getting the werewolf disease, because it's very different.
It is very different. He's got like essentially like syphilis.
Yeah, he gets aside from pissing blood. He starts his face starts breaking out in weird giant pimples.
Horrible pimples.
And he gets really aggressive. And it's like, it clearly, like I said, it's not the focus of the movie, so it's not something they go into. But they clearly scrape the surface of like, all right, what would be the male version of this? And unlike Teen Wolf, where it's the coolest thing that could happen, in this one, it's like, it's the ugly side of male puberty, where it's just zits and aggression and X, Y,
bullying
Z.
Small boys,
which is the funniest
Dalmatian
scene in the movie.
costumes.
This movie is pretty well done, and it hides the fact that it's a really low budget movie really well. I think it looks great. For the most part, I think the werewolf stuff is charmingly bad. Like, it's not terrible. It's not so bad that it takes me out of the movie. It's like, okay, I get it. Lower budget movie. They're doing what they can. I think it's effective. It's fine. And there's a couple things where they do actually think it works really well. Like when she's in the car with the kid and she starts like wolfing out, and they do this really cool thing with her back where she like arches into the light and it looks like her spine is like starting to get spiky. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, there's definitely some really good sort of monster transformation moments. I really liked when Ginger's in the back of the van and she goes full werewolf.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
Like that, the different shots and the way it's cut and the darkness and the light on her. I thought that was really well done. When you see her in full werewolf form, I was a little let down.
Yeah, it's a little silly. But again, it's like at that point in the movie, I think what makes it a great movie is that by that point in the movie, for me anyway, I was all in with those characters, so I could kind of overlook the fact that it was a less than ideal special effect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I think the thing that really threw me is that werewolf Ginger still has boobs.
Well, yeah, I mean, you gotta.
Like, I think that, maybe taking that out. Like, maybe removing the noticeable breasts. I'm not saying no nipples. Mammals have nipples. That's fine. But, like, do we need to have boobs on a werewolf?
Yeah. Well, I did like the inverse of that when she's like halfway to 3/4 werewolf and she goes to the drug dealer's place and she starts to like take her shirt off and she's got like 4 nipples on her chest.
Yeah.
I thought
that was good.
Yeah.
That was good. That I'm all for, but yeah.
But yeah, I think for the most part it covers it hides how low budget it is for the most part, except there's that one scene where it feels like it was either added later or it was just something where they had to shoot it really quick. Is when the kid who's turning into the boy who's turning into the werewolf is like harassing that little child. Yeah. And it's just they're standing like in the open of a field and he's just grabbing him by the shoulders and just shaking him. Just like it's so weirdly set up.
And you catch the joke there, right? That the little boy is dressed as a dog.
I actually did not catch that. That's pretty funny.
It was really funny. It's really, really funny. It's like for some reason, everyone in this town has a dog. Yeah. And for some reason, everyone who's becoming a werewolf cannot stop killing dogs.
Yeah. That's one thing. If you haven't seen this movie and you are sensitive to dog death, don't watch this movie.
Yeah, no, I was very glad that I remembered that a lot of dogs die in this, because a lot of dogs die in this.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that scene, it's like the rest of the movie looks pretty professional. That one scene looks like I shot it in my backyard. You know, it's obviously you can't win them all, but yeah, I think it's a pretty good. I think they do a lot with what they're given and a lot with what they had. The special effects, like we said, they're not bad. They kind of go. They have their ups and their downs. But yeah, I think the story is just really strong, and those two characters and their relationships are just strong enough that it carries you through everything else really well.
Yeah, and the acting is really good in this.
It is, yes.
Like the lead actors are really impressive, I think.
Yeah, she Ginger in real life actually 4 years younger than Brigitte.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unexpected. And that's what being a teen girl is like.
Also, trivia corner. Brigitte is. Did you ever? You know the TV adaptation of It from like 1990 with Tim Curry.
This is one. Yeah, this is one that I have not seen. And
really?
It makes everyone. It makes everyone angry that I have not seen it.
That's a quintessential childhood trauma. Is watching that movie. I don't know if it holds up anymore. But anyway, she plays Beverly Marsh in that one.
Oh, good. I like that. That's good casting.
Yeah. Yeah, so how long of a time period does this movie take place over? Because I really could not track when it was supposed to take place.
I could not. I think it's supposed to be. Well, she has a calendar. Remember, like, so she gets the calendar, the free calendar that comes with the box of tampons.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And Bridget's marking off the days under a blanket at night.
Right.
From when this whole thing starts. So I think the movie begins in like mid to late September. Mm-hmm. And then I know because it's obvious about it. It ends on Halloween.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting because it seems to me like I thought that Halloween stuff kind of came out of nowhere. It just seemed like it was coming to the end of the movie and they were like, oh, there's a Halloween party happening. Where I feel like usually the way that you would handle that stuff is Halloween is sort of like your for lack of a better term, your ticking timer. So she gets bit and starts changing, like you said, late September, but they're already like talking about Halloween, or it's like they're getting ready for this dance, or not this dance, but like this party that's going to happen or whatever.
Yeah, there's usually some sort of like chatter about it
so
upcoming.
Like,
and there's usually like decorations around in the weeks leading up. It's not like Halloween just like we wake up on the last day of October, put up all our decorations, have Halloween for a day, and then take them down.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a normal person, you put up your Halloween decorations at the end of August, and you take them down at the end of November.
Yeah. Or you don't take them down.
Yeah, or that too. Yes. But yeah, I feel like it feels like they almost missed a little bit of a opportunity to have that Halloween party be sort of like the thing it was driving to. So like her showing up at the Halloween party as the werewolf could have a little bit more tension there instead of it just sort of being a thing. And what happens to the mom? Like the mom. I
wondered the same thing. So, all right, I want to say a couple things in response to the things you brought up. That I agree completely that I think having Halloween is more of this like climactic moment in a more like, you know, with more hints and more things leading up to it. And then having her show up full werewolf at the party and like kill a bunch of people would have been great.
Yeah.
Like I would have been for that. I understand that they're probably their special effects and like gore budget just couldn't handle it.
Sure, yeah.
So I'll give it to them for that. And then I mean, so the mom as a character, I kind of want to talk about her like more than just what happens to her because we don't know and I wish we did. I found her so grating and so annoying at first. And then as the movie goes on, you're sort of like, oh, well, she's really not that bad. Like, she's trying to be there for her daughters and she doesn't really know how. And she knows that, like, Ginger and Bridget's relationship is not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows that, but she's also smart enough to know that, like, the best way to make sure that your teenage daughters don't do something is to tell them to do it. Because they're going to immediately want to ignore you.
Right.
And so she's like naive and kind of ignorant of what they're doing and what they're going through for so much of the movie. But then I love the scene where she finds the dead girl's fingers.
Yes.
In the backyard. Mm-hmm. And like plays it off to the dad like, oh, come on, you wimp. Obviously they're fake. They're from the girls are doing more of their death photos. Like, it's just, oh, come on, get over it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she like puts them in the Tupperware container and you kind of see like the way it's shot, you see her sort of like struggling just to close it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she puts it away and she leans back against the fridge and you can tell from her face and the way she exhales that she knows. Like, she's seen the dead body. She knows the fingers are real. Like, and yet her reaction is like, oh, okay, I'm going to go get my daughters. And I'm going to figure this out. And that might entail blowing up the house.
Yes.
And running away. But I'm going to protect, like she's not as, like, wimpy and, like, limp noodled, like, PTA mom as she comes off. Like, there's something more interesting in that character than, like, you know, she's not just disgusted and horrified and like, oh my God, what have you done? Like, she's willing to risk her entire life to kind of get her daughters out of whatever trouble they've gotten themselves into. And I find that a lot more interesting and a lot more relatable.
Mm-hmm.
That when you're a teenager, you know, your parents seem like extraordinarily lame and annoying. And then as you get older, you start to realize like, oh shit. Like, they did a lot of things for me and they're actually not that bad. And maybe they do know some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the mom is a really unique characterization of a mom in a story like this because of all the reasons that you're saying, where she's the way she is played or written is that she's embarrassing, but she is very well-meaning, and it's just the stuff that she's doing is a little over the top for Ginger and Brigitte, who are both at that point where they're like, "No, fuck you, mom, get out of the bathroom." And what I really like is they double down on it where they, like you were saying, where they don't have her recoil once she finds out what her daughters have done. She doubles down on it and she's like, well, I guess we're gonna have to blow the house up.
Yeah.
Or something.
She is so ready. She's so ready to blow that house up, leave her husband, and like start a new life somewhere else. She's like definitely been fantasizing about that.
Yeah. It's like, the interesting thing about this movie is I think you could draw a lot of comparisons to Carrie, probably.
Yeah.
I think the main difference is that the family dynamic in this is a lot more normal, and I would even say positive than in Carrie. Because again, the mom and the dad, they're not bad people. They're not, beating them and keeping them in the closet. They're just trying to navigate having two kind of weird, dark daughters who are teenagers.
Yeah, especially as those parents, like the very bland, kind of nondescript dad.
Yeah. Oh, I identify with the dad big time. Where like they would say the weirdest shit, and they would just turn to the dad, and he'd just be like, "Huh, okay."
Well, yeah. So you have that dad, and then you have this mom with her like homemade decals on her sweaters and her like little curled like side bangs, and she's clearly going to the craft store a lot. And yet they're very normal. They're like very like wholesome, and yet they let their daughters run around the yard and the neighborhood doing like suicide photo shoots, and the girls live in the basement.
Yes.
Which you can tell from the outside of that house. There are plenty of bedrooms on the normal floors. They are choosing to live in the basement.
Yeah.
And the parents let them.
I loved the payoff for the photos thing, where they cover up the killing of the girl by pretending that it's another a fake photo they're taking. That was very good.
They're also very good at that, Ginger and Brigitte. They're very good makeup artists and stuff.
They are. Yeah, they do a pretty good job. That thing where she's impaled on the fence was very good, very convincing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the father is so interesting because he's got like maybe 2 scenes, and he's not given a lot of stuff to do, nor really should he, because it's not. I mean, the story, it's very much a mother-daughter kind of story.
Yeah.
And I almost wish there was a scene with him where he like took one of the girls aside and was just like, "Listen, if you were like scoring touchdowns or something, that I would get. I just don't get this. I just don't understand what's going on." Like but even there, they don't hit you over the head with it. He's just a dad trying to do his dad thing.
Yep.
He's got 2 weird girls that hope in the back of his head, he's like, I hope they grow out of this.
Yeah. Well,
the mom makes a congratulations, you got your period cake.
Oh my God. And it's so weird. It's like covered in dripping red.
Yeah, it's
like cherry sauce or something.
She says it's her favorite food, but I mean, it's a giant strawberry shortcake that's just like erupting in strawberry sauce.
I do love the one scene that the dad sort of gets to have where the mom and the dad are in bed, getting ready for bed, and she's got her curlers on and she's reading some book, and the dad says, "They're up to something." And the mom says, "No, you don't know. What do you know? They're fine. They're just going through things." And he's like, "No, they're up to something. Why else would they care what you have to say?" Or something like that. It's just like, yep. That's his moment. That's his moment to shine.
And there's the other. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The other great parenting moment is when I think Ginger is like freaking out, or she's not coming to dinner or something, and the mom's asking what's going on and if she should go and talk to her, and Bridget's like, "No, she said she thinks it's cool that you let us figure things out for ourselves." And the mom kind of pauses and she goes, "Oh, well, okay, all right."
Yeah. oh, she thinks it's cool. She thinks something I'm doing is cool. Yeah, you can see that in her reaction. It's really great. But I was gonna say, I sort of like, I kind of enjoy that the dad isn't more of a character, because none of the men, even the teenagers, like none of the male characters are really fully characters. Like the closest you get is Sam, the drug dealer and horticulturalist,
and
like,
Cherry Hunter.
And Cherry Hunter.
Worst phrase. It's too bad. He doesn't seem like a cherry hunter. He seems like a very nice boy who just happens to also be a drug dealer.
Yeah. Look, it's a home grow facility, okay?
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's legal.
That's true. Yeah.
But he's like half of a character, or 3/4 of a character. But the only really like fully fleshed out characters in this movie are female, which I think is I think it's interesting, and it's a good choice, because it's sort of like the mom, even in her own weird way, kind of understands what the girls are going through. Like she doesn't, but she does. You know what I mean? Like there's a connection there.
Yeah, I think the one change that I might make, and I don't know, maybe this would be too much, is, as I said, when we got into talking about the mom, she just kind of disappears. She drives Brigitte to the drug dealer Halloween party, which is hilarious.
Yep.
And then she waits in the car while Brigitte goes in to try and stop Ginger or whatever. And then maybe like a few minutes later, she gets out of the car and goes into the party, I assume to try and find Brigitte and Ginger. And if I remember correctly, that's the last we see of her. Like
that is the last we see of her.
Yeah, she never makes it back to the house or anything. And
yeah, I
was thinking maybe it would be too much of a break in the action, or wouldn't make a ton of sense because she's not one of the main characters. But it might have been kind of interesting to have her there in some capacity for the climax between Ginger and Brigitte, just because there's having that the mother character there during this ugly scene with the two sisters who are, one's turning into a monster, the other one's going to kill her, blah, 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 blah. It might have added an interesting dynamic to that whole thing. But maybe that would have been too much, because I think the ending works really well.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying, and I don't think you're wrong, but I think it would really depend on how it was done. And then I think that having the final moments be just Brigitte and Ginger, I think that's important, because I think it's the two of them both sort of fully becoming who they're going to be, like fully becoming independent and adults, even if Ginger is a monstrous were creature. Like her transformation is complete. She is what she is.
Right.
And it's that sort of like symbolic, like you're not a child anymore. You're an adult now, and you need to handle things by yourself sometimes.
Right.
And I think that's what this whole movie is about, really, is that sort of transition to realizing that you can't always have just this like one central bond or central relationship in your life and just do everything based off of that codependency.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I it didn't really hit me until that final scene that's kind of what the movie is about, and I think it's really effective. I thought that final scene with the two of them was surprisingly effective. I think, jumping back for a second to the how the male characters are fairly lightly sketched. I really appreciated the fake out, or let's say like subversion of expectations, having Sam there at the end. Kind of trying to step into the heroic role and then immediately getting torn to shreds because of it.
Oh, yeah.
When he gets pulled out of the closet there, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, no, I really liked that it ended up being, and I think that's more what I mean when I say like that the male characters are sort of secondary. It's that they're not the point.
Right,
like,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, they're not fighting over some guy. Like they fight and they lash out at each other through some of the male characters sometimes. But it's not about chasing down a love interest or, you know, rescuing your sister from this bad boyfriend or something.
Right,
it's just about the relationship between the two of them, which I think is very unique.
It's not like there's a guy in the movie who like turns out to also be a werewolf.
Yeah, and
luring...
he and Ginger run away together.
Yeah, it's not, and it's like Brigitte trying to save her from running off with the evil werewolf boy. That's not really what it is.
That's a far lesser movie.
Yeah, and I think the way they handle is really good. And I think maybe if I were to add the mom in at the end, what I might do is save the thing about we'll just burn down the house and start anew. I think I would save that until she gets there at the end. So it's like she sees what's happening. She sees that her daughter is turned into a giant were-monster, and the other one is like bleeding and trying to stab her and stuff. And then she's like, "This is fine. I just want what's best for you." Something like that. And
Girls,
I don't know.
stop fighting.
Yeah. And maybe, I don't know, maybe she gets eaten because of it. Because, you know, you got to take the mom out of the equation. So they're really on their own.
Or even like if Brigitte could find some way to sort of like, oh, and then I locked her in the bathroom and I said, Mom, I'm sorry, but like I have to do this. Like, you could do something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
It would at least give us some more closure on like, where did she go?
Yes, yeah. Where
did she end up?
But yeah, by the time you get to the end and she ends up having to kill her sister, there's just I think it's a really effectively sad ending where you do kind of get this feeling that it is more about these two characters, like you were saying, having to break this codependency that they have. And I think for me anyway, when I got to that point, I was surprised by it. It did land with me a little bit more than I was kind of expecting from a what if periods meant werewolves kind of log line of a movie, you know?
Yeah, there's something about this movie that it's almost kind of tough for me to watch it sometimes because I actually do think it gets how, you know, I don't know. Hopefully things are better nowadays for all teenagers. I doubt that they are, but I wish that they were. But you know, being a preteen and a teenager in the late 90s into the early to mid 2000s, like there's something in this movie that captures what it was like to be a teenage girl in that period very, very well, in my opinion. And it has to do with, I could narrow it down to maybe two things. If you pay attention, the way that the sisters talk about other girls, about being a girl, about periods, about all of that stuff, it is like so negative and so disdainful.
Yeah, definitely.
Like Brigitte says to Ginger at one point something like along the lines of there's something wrong with you besides just being female.
Right.
And then it's like there's all this talk about like, you know, how many times do they use like, you bitch, you're such a girl, like all of these things that are like feminine gendered insults, and it's the girls throwing them back and forth at each other and at themselves. It's not men doing it to them. It's them. It's like they've so deeply internalized like all of this rhetoric. I mean, they even call getting their period the curse.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I for one very much relate to being a teenage girl and like having those feelings and talking that way about being a girl. And the other thing I would say, not to go on forever, is that that super intense kind of codependent relationship between Ginger and Brigitte is very, very familiar to me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I grew up with brothers, so I do not have a sister. But I had one or two friends, like best friends, when I was younger. Like, you know, say like 15 and younger, where we got so codependently attached to one another that it definitely got unhealthy.
Right.
And so I can just, it strikes so many, like the intensity of female friendships and how they can be like full of so much love and yet so much animosity, and you can like tear each other down like nobody else in this moment where you're both really vulnerable. And so this movie kind of hits me where it hurts sometimes.
And just to mention the kind of the difference between how they treat the genders again. You're saying how the girls are very mean to each other and very aggressive overall. The guys in this movie aren't really aggressive. Like, they're not, at least from what I remember anyway, they're not like really mean to the girls. They're kind of creepy, and they're definitely trying to like, you know, get handsy with them and stuff, and they're being kind of lewd, but they're not like they're not getting like physical with them. They're not threatening violence or anything like that. All of that intense stuff is coming from the other girls.
Yeah. The only time that any of the boys get that aggressive is, oh god, like the kid who's becoming a werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only because he's becoming a werewolf. Like,
right.
His character before and after that is not. If anything, like, the scene where he and Ginger have sex can very easily be read as a scene where she rapes him.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because he's saying, like, slow down, stop, like, what are you doing? And she's just like, shut up and take it, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, so that's an interesting reversal where it's like, because the aggression is coming from her, it just complicates like the whole movie. Like this movie would be really, really different if it were about two brothers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think with that in mind, my favorite scene or two scene back to back, whatever, is after is when she the Brigitte is fashioning the belly button ring out of silver, and Ginger is they're having this like really dark, frank discussion about what it means, about what the sex was like and how it was terrible, and that it's she's just gonna become like a punchline, and it's this really troubling breakdown of what happened. And then like immediately the next scene is the guy coming to school covered in sores and cuts, bleeding from the dick. And they're like,
kind of limping.
They're like, what happened? And he's like, she rocked my world, man. And it's like high five. And it's like, yeah, that seems right.
Yeah, because it is this like, and Ginger even kind of says it that, he's gonna say, that I'm just a lay now, because that's what he's gonna say. And Brigitte says like, well, you can say the same thing back, and she's like, that's not how it works.
Right.
Like, she could have walked around being like, yeah, I kicked the shit out of him and then I raped him, and everybody would be like, no, you can't rape a boy.
Right.
Like, it's just that kind of attitude towards it.
Yeah, that scene to me was a really, really good, a really honest depiction of that kind of scenario inside of a genre movie, which I think is when stuff like this just like is firing on all cylinders, where it's like, you've got it's werewolf stuff, but what they're talking about is actually really honest and applicable to real life stuff, and it's all just meshing together really well.
Yeah, and the thing that this movie does that I find really impressive beyond the stuff we've already talked about, maybe we've touched on it a little bit, is that it does still have a sense of humor.
Oh, definitely, yes. Yeah.
Like, there are still funny lines and funny moments and, like, points where you can laugh out loud, even though it's dealing with, like, really heavy shit through the whole movie.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, any movie where you're turning into a werewolf has to have at least a little bit of self-awareness of what you're doing, because it's you can go too far though, because I love The Howling. I think The Howling has a pretty nice balance of that stuff. One of the reasons I really don't care for American Werewolf in London is because I think it's too tongue-in-cheek. Like, the entire soundtrack to that movie is just every version of Blue Moon that they could find. And it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. It's like, it's to the point where it feels like the people making it feel like they think they're making a silly movie. Which, you know, is, I feel like you got to commit to the bit, as they say.
Yeah.
Speaking of music, I don't know about you, but I am so happy that there are no songs from the era in this movie. Like, it's not like the usual kind of teen thriller movie from the mid to late 90s where it's got like a bunch of no-name alt-rock bands doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I really like that they didn't have enough money to afford actual songs, and they were just using like score music, because I think it stops it from being really, really dated.
Yeah, it does, but there's still some of that sort of music of the era.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Mixed in there, here and there, which isn't. It's not bad, you know. Like, it was made when it was made. It's a teen movie, kind of like, you know, it takes place in a high school. To try to avoid anything that even sounded reminiscent of pop music would have been kind of difficult to do in this movie. But yeah, like I said, one of my things for this movie was aggressively 90s styling.
Yes.
And I think that applies to like haircuts, outfits, the music, like especially those three goons who remind me so much of did you watch Daria?
Yes. Not a lot, but I did, yes.
Well, do you remember Daria's younger sister Quinn? Who was like the pretty one. She wore like a little pink t-shirt and was like very popular.
Very, very vaguely.
So I bring Quinn up because three guys followed Quinn around like lost puppy dogs, trying to like get her to date any one of them.
Oh, I just looked her up. I do remember that character, yes.
Yeah, and there are these three dudes who just follow her everywhere she goes, and that's what those three guys on the bleachers remind me so much of them, and that is just so, you know, the year 1999 to me.
Yeah.
Big jeans with cargo pockets.
Yeah.
A t-shirt with an unbuttoned button-down short sleeve shirt over it.
Yes, that was a big one. Lots of big clothes back then.
Big clothes.
But yeah, the music was. I went back and forth on it because I was thinking the same thing as you were, where it's like some of it feels like it's of the era type music, where it's like it sounds like it should be in an anti-smoking ad from like 1997, like faux techno stuff.
Yeah.
But when it went more,
oh god,
when it went more like traditional kind of score sounding, I thought that stuff was actually really nice. The music was done by a guy named Mike Shields, who also did the music for Tucker and Dale versus Evil, as well as a bunch of other stuff. He looks like he does a lot of work in Canada, so unsurprisingly.
Canadian composer.
Yeah, I think that's it, except for placement. This was number, what did I say? 131 on the list. Do you feel like it deserves its place? Would you move it higher? Would you move it lower? Would you take it off and switch it with something?
I always need to clarify this. When we say higher, we mean in the number range, right?
Yeah, higher as in closer to number 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I would maybe bump it a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Not by a ton, but maybe a little bit. Like if it were a little closer to like 150, I probably would have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
more...
I'm gonna go with the test that we've been doing since then, which is I look at a few of the movies that are rated lower than it, and yes, it definitely should be lower.
Yeah.
It is 2 spots higher than The Thing, and it is 10 spots higher than The Omen. And I think those 2 things for me that's definitely might need to rethink the placement on that one.
Yeah. I think this one coasts into its spot via its sort of like cult status.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, where it wasn't really like a huge hit when it came out, but ever since then, there are people who have like a deep, deep affection for it. And very few detractors. Like I don't often hear like negative things about this movie.
Yeah, definitely. When people bring it up, they usually do bring it up in a positive manner. And not to belabor my point of which is what might become the theme of this show. Yeah. But I think Ginger Snaps is very much in the same vein as Starry Eyes, where I think it's like I think those are in the same box, you know, at the video store, that they're going to be in the same shelf for me.
Yeah.
At my video store, which is very idiosyncratically organized.
Clay's video store.
Yeah, you won't be able to find anything because the order system is very specific.
The entire decor is just the Black Lodge from Twin Peaks.
That sounds good to me. But yeah, I feel like it's one where it's definitely deserves to be on there, but I would probably put it a little bit lower. Like it's a really good bench player, to use a sports analogy. You know, it's like it's not a heavy hitter. It's not you know, your leadoff guy, but it's like you've got him in there for when you need him. It's a good player to have on the team.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I don't think it shouldn't be on the list, but I don't think it should be like higher than 150.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I think that's gonna do it for Ginger Snaps. Our next movie, will be our 10th episode, which means we are going wild on the 5s, as they say on Yacht Rock. And Amanda it's Amanda's choice to pick the movie this time. So what do you got for us, Amanda?
Well, I just went through a moment of pure paranoia where I checked that's not on the list, right? How is that not on the list? Is it? So I'm quadruple checking in this moment. And it is not. I would like us to do The Innkeepers. Sure.
Yeah. Ty West. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's his movie he did before that. House of the Devil is on the list. That's number 119. Yes. So we'll get to that eventually. You have not seen House of the Devil, right?
I have not seen House of the Devil. No.
Ooh, that'll be interesting. Yeah.
But I think I would like to do The Innkeepers.
And that's how would you describe The Innkeepers for anyone who hasn't seen it?
It is a movie that feels like it's going to be a sort of more traditional haunted house movie. Mm-hmm. And then turns into something else.
Okay.
I feel like I could describe, like, I don't want to say too much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that's going to do it for Ginger Snaps. And next time we'll be back with our wild card pick, The Innkeepers. So if you enjoyed the show, please rate us or review us on iTunes. That would be amazing. And until next time, plug in a sign-off that I haven't thought of.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.